huge figure suddenly appeared in the forest. The man hiding in the water shivered in fear as he watched the other man brutally eat the lamb. The man dared not make a sound. At that moment, the soldier hiding behind a tree couldn't help but look back at him. Just when the soldier was glad that he had not been discovered, the tree behind him suddenly rose to the ground. After a brief glance, the soldier was so scared that he ran away. Seeing a human giant for the first time was strange. However, looking at the other party's frantic fleeing appearance, the giant still chose to chase after them. Looking at the motionless human on the ground, the giant's heart was very torn. After all, he didn't like to eat food that wasn't fresh. After careful observation, the giant finally decided to use artificial respiration to revive the other person. But just as he was about to take a bite, a sharp sword pierced his foot. Under the pain, the giant instinctively kicked the other person out of the room. After removing the sword from his foot, the giant picked up the human on the ground and decided to bring him home to show him some color. Jack, who witnessed this, rushed back into the water. The current of the water masked his scent, so the giant didn't notice anything unusual. After the giant left, Jack hid in the water and surfaced. He followed the giant through the thick woods. Jack realized he was in the legendary Sky City. Meanwhile, at the edge of the cloud world, 3 humans seemed to have found something. When the bald man went to check it out, the traitor behind him pushed him off. Just as the two were feeling smug about it, a huge palm suddenly reached over. The giant bit the deputy to death. At that moment, another giant climbed up from the cliff and surrounded the remaining traitor. Seeing that he was about to become the other party's food, the traitor quickly pulled out a crown from his backpack. This crown was the crown of supremacy created by monks using dark magic in ancient times in order to go to heaven. The monks at that time planted the heavenly vines using magic buckets. They followed the vines and climbed all the way up, but they were not greeted by angels, but by a kind of ferocious giants. The giants followed the vines and came to earth, killing and plundering. Watching what happened to the humans, the monks finally realized their mistake. To atone for their guilt, the monks worked together to kill a giant. Then they took out each other's hearts. Using powerful dark magic, they fashioned it into a crown. This crown had the power to control the giant. When the king put on the crown, all the giants fell to their knees. Finally, under the king's order, the giants were banished back to Sky City. Now hundreds of years have passed. The crown is in the hands of a traitor. The giants have fallen to their knees in submission. Even the leader, the 2-headed giant, couldn't resist the power of the crown and could only press his face to the ground. The princess and the guards thought they were saved, but the traitor didn't want to let them go, because he had a bigger plan, to lead an army of giants to take over the human world. When they found out that there were countless human beings in the world below, the giants shouted hooray. But before that, they needed to make the princess and the guards a delicious meal before they invaded the human world. This ugly giant was cooking, but every time he cooks, he has a strange habit. The man in front of him was his dinner for the day. Just see him sprinkle down a large amount of flour. He rolls up the man in the dough and arranges him with the 2 little pigs. Then he took out a bamboo skewer and prepared to stick it on top of the ingredients. When he heard that the piglets had lost their voices, the man trembled in fear. Luckily, the bamboo stick didn't hit him, so he was relieved and fainted. After placing the plate in the fireplace, the giant set his sights on the princess. He saw that the princess was about to be killed. Jack, who was hiding in the dark, climbed up to the knife rack and pulled out a 40-meter-long knife with all his strength, and poked it straight into the giant's spine. The giant struggled with the pain and soon went to the Yellow Springs. After successfully rescuing the 2 men, they returned to the edge of the clouds the same way they came. This is the only way back to the surface, but it was being guarded by the giant. Jack had an idea. He picked up a beehive with a stick and sneaked up to the giant. While the giant was sleeping, they peeled off his helmet and put the hive inside. In no time, the bees started to go crazy because they couldn't stand the bad breath, and the giant kept falling back. But just as he was about to fall off the cliff, the giant managed to take off his helmet. The plan was about to fail, when a small bee attracted everyone's attention. The bee kicked the giant off the cliff with his big foot. The 3 of them were overjoyed at the sight, but just as they were about to leave, the guards chose to stay behind to deal with the traitor. Jack and the princess told the king that the giants were ready to invade. Meanwhile, the monk on the ground was being bullied by the crowd, but a huge figure fell from the sky. There was a loud bang and the ground was instantly smashed into a big pit. The king finally believed that the legendary giant kingdom really existed, but for the safety of his people, the king had to give up his daughter. He resolutely ordered to cut down the vines. Jack and the princess were slowly descending down the vines. The princess thought her father was still waiting for him, but she didn't know that they were working overtime to cut down the vines. On the other side, under the leadership of the traitor, the giants are ready to attack the human world. Just when the traitor thought he was on the verge of completing his mission, his guards suddenly attacked him. They both fell into the cave. The traitor rushed to the giants and called out for help, but the 2-headed giant outside was waiting for this moment. He wanted to use the human's hand. He wanted to use the human's hand to kill the traitor with the crown. But he never expected. The guards were no match for the traitor. He was about to be kicked off the cliff when the traitor stopped. He wanted to torture the king's lackey, not realizing that the villain died of talking too much. Just as he was sighing in triumph, the guards saw the opportunity to plunge their daggers into his feet. The traitor wailed in pain, but the guard didn't want to give him a chance, quickly pulling out his dagger and plunging it into the traitor's chest. The guard sent him to his final resting place. The guard wanted to take the crown from his head. Before he could do so, a pair of huge palms grabbed the traitor's body upwards, and the crown fell into the giant's hands. The two-headed giant wore the crown as a ring. He was once again the leader of the giants. At that moment, the soldiers on the ground managed to cut the roots of the vines. The tree began to collapse. The guards jumped onto the vines and plunged down. The hope of attacking the human world was dashed once again. The two-headed giants let out a roar of fury. But just as they were about to go back, the other head of the giant seemed to have discovered something. The two-headed giant blew gently, and 4 seeds with magic power fell into the stream precisely, soaked in water. The seeds quickly took root and sprouted, and in the blink of an eye, they grew into some huge trees. With the two-headed giant's command, the battle cry instantly resounded through the clouds. Countless giants began to charge. They climbed up the vines and forcibly changed their direction of growth. The two-headed giant took the lead. He couldn't wait to taste the beef. Jack, who was feeding the horses below, noticed the sky from the water. He rushed to catch up with the army back in the city. The king was dumbfounded by the news. The next thing he knew, giants were coming out of the woods. They ran for their lives, but it was too late. The giants grabbed the soldiers on their horses and hammered them. In order to stop the king from escaping, the giants broke off the windmill and smashed it in front of them. Even if the crown fell to the ground, the people didn't dare to stay. If they hesitated, they would be the giants' food. By now, the guards of the castle had already noticed the situation. The soldiers were ready to fight. They poured the blackened fuel down the passage into the moat below. Then, as they enter the drawbridge, they shoot rockets to ignite the fuel below, instantly creating a wall of fire. As the bridge was about to rise, Jack rushed his horse to leap over it, but the two-headed giant behind him was one step too late. He tries to climb the bridge and enter the gates, but the guarding generals would have none of it. A barrage of arrows knocked the two-headed giant into the fire. Just when everyone thought they had stopped the giant in his tracks, a huge bell weighing several tons crashed into the castle. Before anyone could react, several huge iron hooks caught the drawbridge, followed by a burning tree. The giants knew they couldn't get to the castle, so they tried to open the bridge by harassment. The powerful force made the iron hooks of the suspension bridge crushed. Under such an attack, the human beings would soon be unable to resist. Looking at the castle in front of them, the giants seemed to have seen success and couldn't help but stretch out their greedy hands. At that moment, the situation suddenly began to reverse. With the Juga crossbow weapon in play, the giants were being beaten back. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, the cunning giants took out their oversized catapults. The powerful marbles destroyed the human weapons. Looking at the encounter, the king knew that the defeat was final, so he told Jack to take care of the princess and escape through the secret passage of the palace. But what they didn't expect was, the two-headed giant didn't die. The two-headed giant did not die, but emerged from the sewers of the palace. He came to the center of the palace with a meteor hammer weighing several tons. Hiding in the yellow robes, the two thought they had successfully escaped from death. But the next moment, they were discovered and ran away. Unexpectedly, the princess was caught by the giant. In the nick of time, Jack grabbed a 40-meter-long machete and tried to attack, but he forgot that the two-headed giant has 2 heads. At the moment the machete was about to fall, Jack was also caught by the giant. Jack opened his necklace and took out the last magic bean in the world. Jack took out the last magic bean in the world and threw it precisely into the open mouth. The magic bean went down the esophagus and into the stomach. The giant reacted quickly to the acid in his stomach. After dropping the 2 men in his hands in a panic, the giant tried to get the bean out. But how could he stop the vines from growing? By now, the giants outside had already breached the city gates. Looking at the humans in front of them, the giants took a big step forward. Just when everyone was in complete despair, the giants suddenly lowered their weapons. Then, under the gaze of the crowd, they all knelt down. When they looked back, they realized that Jack was holding the supreme crown that could control the giants. The war between humans and giants has finally come to an end. At the end of the story, Jack ordered the giants to return to Sky City, and the soldiers cut down the only vine bridge between the 2 worlds, and Jack became king, and he lived happily ever after with the princess.